For the past 18 years, the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center in Great Falls has been educating and entertaining people of all ages from all over the states, the country, and even the world. The center tells the story of the Lewis and Clark expedition from 1804 through 1806, offering amazing audio, visual, and interactive displays and much more. And here to give us more insight into the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center is the manager, Andrea Tavegia. Andrea, welcome. We say welcome because I don't think you've been in our studio before. You're fairly new to the position. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be the manager of the Interpretive Center.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. My story actually starts back when I was 17 years old. I came out to Yellowstone National Park with my family, and I watched a young woman, maybe in her early 20s, give an interpretive program about the fires of '88. And the entire time my jaw was on the ground. I just loved every second of it and knew that that's what I wanted to do. So I went to school, got a couple in public lands management, and went right into the National Park Service as an interpretive ranger. Eventually came over to the Forest Service, and now I'm here in the great state of Montana.
All right. Well, it's hard to believe, but this Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center just celebrated its 18th anniversary. It's a major accomplishment, I know, for this area. Tell us a little bit about the center and how it came to be what it is today.
Sure. Well, the Interpretive Center is actually the brainchild of a lot of different groups. There were folks from the city, the county, the state, private nonprofits, and then of course the federal government, initially the Park Service and now the Forest Service, who all kind of dreamt up this grand idea of interpreting the story of Lewis and Clark in their expedition. And that began all the way back in the 80s. So it was a long time coming, and the center finally opened in 1998, which was just in time because, of course, the Lewis and Clark Bicentennial was celebrated in 2004, 5, and 6. So it was really a long time coming, and a lot of different people were involved. Ultimately, it is now run by the U.S. Forest Service in conjunction with a lot of our partners helping us out in many different ways.
So was it just an effort by a group of dedicated individuals to get this to come to Great Falls, or were there other communities that were trying to get this type of center in their area?
There are other areas across the trail that have interpretive centers. Some of them already existed, some of them came later, but primarily it was folks right here in this area who said, you know what, Lewis and Clark and their expedition spent almost a month in the Great Falls area, which is longer than anywhere else they spent on the trail with the exception of their winter camps. And they said, well, how amazing would it be that we can interpret that story, not only for here in Great Falls, but the entire trail, and have a wonderful facility right here to do that. So it was really local folks who dreamt it up and made it come to fruition. Yeah,
and one of the great things about this Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center is we say it's in Great Falls, and it's not like right smack dab in the middle of the city, but it's actually out on the banks of the Missouri River. It's kind of built into the landscape there.
It is, and it's beautiful. It's probably the most beautiful facility I've ever worked with. Just incredible. It's absolutely just fits right there, and we get to see all kinds of wildlife right here in town. And then, of course, we have amazing visitors who come out and love it as well.
What is the mission of the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center?
Our job is to really interpret the story of the entire expedition and then also focus on what happened right here in Great Falls. So we do that through a number of ways. We've got educational programs for students, we do interpretive programming for the general public, and then we just have a really incredible facility with an exhibit space that walks folks through that entire journey, the ups, the downs, the stalls, everything in between, and really helps folks connect back to something that happened over 200 years ago.
How big is the center, the actual physical structure itself, and then the outlying parts on the grounds, I guess?
I believe the center is about 25,000 square feet. Okay. It's pretty big. We have a number of different spaces, including the exhibit hall. And then the property itself, I believe, is around 8 acres.
Okay. And how many people work at the Interpretive Center?
We have 6 permanent employees. Most of them work year-round, and then we also hire a handful of seasonal employees in the summertime to help us with the influx of visitation. But we also have almost 70 volunteers who work for absolutely free and love every minute of it. They're incredible people, and the knowledge contained within the staff and the volunteers is mind-boggling. Yeah. They really know more than I could ever hope to know.
What does it take to be a volunteer, and how can people become one?
Sure, just desire and passion and the time to do it. So if you're interested in volunteering at the Interpretive Center, we have a number of different jobs. So if you don't feel comfortable speaking in front of people, we have what we call our behind the scenes folks who help us answer phones and do a little of the more administrative side. We also have folks who are docents downstairs and roam the exhibit hall answering questions. We have people who sit at the front desk and help people kind of figure their way through the Interpretive Center. We have a number of positions that people could volunteer for. And if you're interested in volunteering with us, just give us a call or stop on by and let us know that you're interested, and we can talk through what might fit for you and where we have the need.
All right. On the average, do you have any idea how many people visit the center on a yearly basis?
Yeah, so that visitation has changed throughout the years, but right now we're seeing approximately 45,000 people a year.
Okay. And what time of the year is, I know you're open all year round, but is there any certain time of the year? I would imagine summer, probably a big time for you.
Summer is a very big time for us, really starting around the end of May and sometimes going through September. And a lot of that is obviously summer vacation. People are taking their vacations then. We see a lot of foreign visitation during that time. And it's really our peak season, but we are open year-round. We have slight schedule changes that happen throughout the year, but you can always give us a call and find out exactly when we're open and make sure that we're going to be there when you want to come see us.
And that number is 406-727-8733.
Correct.
If you want to get more information. We'll have that coming up a little bit later as well. I know there's another group that's very important in the vitality of the center, and that's the Lewis and Clark Foundation. Tell me what that is and maybe how they differ from your regular staff like yourself.
Sure. So that can be a little bit confusing sometimes, especially when we work so closely together. But the Lewis and Clark Foundation is our cooperating nonprofit. So I work for the U.S. Forest Service, which is a federal government agency, and they're a completely private company or association that is nonprofit. And their mission is to help the Interpretive Center in any way that they can, whether that be financially or providing folks to help with staffing or help with events or do things that the federal government can't do or purchase on their own. And so they do a lot of really incredible things with and for the Interpretive Center. They're really great to work with, and anytime that you come into the Interpretive Center, you can come in and see them as well because they're always around. And
I know that they have some big fundraisers throughout the year.
They do.
One is a kind of a dinner and auction. It's the Lewis and Clark Trail
Mixer.
Trail Mixer.
Yes.
All right. That's
and we just had that this last April, and that went swimmingly, and folks were really excited. It was a good time.
Great. We talked also about the volunteers, and I know they play such a big role in the center. How many volunteers did you say you had?
About 65.
65, okay.
Yeah.
And they range in age from all over the gamut, I guess.
We do have a huge range of ages. Most of them are retirees because those tend to be the folks that have the time to volunteer, but all of them are incredibly passionate. I'm always impressed at how passionate our volunteers are and how much they know.
Yeah.
It's really amazing.
Well, you said that the Interpretive Center was opened its doors in 1998, and then not too many years after that was the bicentennial of the Lewis and Clark Expedition, 2004. There was a lot of interest, obviously, in this area and all around the country. Do you still see that interest in Lewis and Clark and the expedition even 10 years after the bicentennial of their expedition? We do. So, of course, the bicentennial is kind of a big landmark for folks, and that was really amped up, and a lot of folks came to see us for that reason. But there are a lot of Lewis and Clark buffs out there, and a lot of people who were very excited about the expedition and what happened on it, and what happened before, and what happened after. And the Interpretive Center here in Great Falls really does a great job of telling that story from beginning to end. And so we tend to be a really great destination for those folks to come visit, and we still see a lot of Lewis and Clark fanatics. Great. Talk about the people that come to the Interpretive Center. I know there's a lot of folks in the Great Falls and Montana area that talk about it, but you get people from, as we said earlier, all over the state, the nation, the world. We do.
So my favorite story was told to me by my staff shortly after I got here, and that was that they said the #1 way that people find out about us is through word of mouth. And they were actually told a story by a gentleman or a family that came in from London, and they asked them why they chose to come to the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center in Great Falls, Montana. And the gentleman responded, well, my neighbor down the street told me about it and told me I had to come. So we're getting word of mouth advertisement around the world, and it's great. People really seem to enjoy it, and we love seeing everyone from around the world because it brings us different perspectives. You know, if you grew up in Montana and you learned about Lewis and Clark in elementary school, you've probably got a pretty good idea of what happened and what occurred. And if you're coming from somewhere else, you might not be familiar with that history. It's neat to see people's reactions.
Yeah, there's, I know, so much to see once you walk through the doors of the Interpretive Center, and you know, everything from the theater to the interactive displays. If you could just kind of walk us through when someone comes in the doors of the Interpretive Center and maybe gets the whole experience, tell us what they're going to experience.
Sure. So when you first come in the doors, we have a great display of the Great Falls then and now. So before the dams were put in and what they look like now. And it's neat to see that difference. But shortly after you get through there, you're going to run into our staff and volunteers, and they're going to give you a short orientation of what the building is, how it's set up, and what you're going to see. And if you start right up in the lobby, you'll start at a bust of President Jefferson, and he's going to explain why the Louisiana Purchase happened and why he sent Lewis and Clark where he did. Shortly after that, you're going to go to a map of what they knew of what is now the United States, and you'll see that entire western section is just blank. There's nothing there. And then you'll go downstairs, and our exhibit hall has an incredible layout. You'll follow the carpet, and it's color-coded. So if it's brown, you're on land, and if you're blue, you're in the river, and you're going to follow the path of the river as far as that goes until you have to go over some mountain passes and then finally reach the west coast. And on one side, you're going to see the Anglo perspective of what happened with the gentlemen on the expedition and ladies. And on the other side, you're going to see the Native American perspective, how the tribes felt, what they encountered. And it's really neat to see that dichotomy and have that experience. And it really does cover the entire journey, including the return trip. And we have docents that will answer questions for you. We have staff that will answer questions. And then to supplement your experience, we also give interpretive programs throughout the day and show a couple of different informational movies.
All right. Yeah, let's talk about the movies. The theater is it's just a magnificent, I think 150-seat theater, is that?
Approximately, yeah.
Tell us about that theater and what movies you show and people can see there.
Sure, it's a great theater. I love stadium seating, and that theater's got it. So there's not a bad seat in the house. Right now we show 2 different films. One was by Ken Burns, and it's kind of a condensed version of a longer film that he made, but this focuses specifically on the Lewis and Clark expedition right here in Great Falls. And then we have another one that was really specifically made for the Interpretive Center, commissioned by the Interpretive Center, that again tells that story of what happened while the expedition was right here in Great Falls. So you can get 2 different ways of telling a similar story, and it really seems to appeal with folks, and they're both very interesting and they fly by very quickly. Yeah,
and I know Ken Burns, the acclaimed documentary filmmaker, was in Montana and along the whole Lewis and Clark Trail, but right around the time, probably a little bit maybe before the Interpretive Center opened, he was in Great Falls in the Gates of the Mountains, I know. So along with Tom Brokaw, Stephen Ambrose, who was alive at the time, the great historian. But yeah, just some fantastic, and you show other films throughout the year too, as well, at different times, right?
We do. We have special events. One of them is our Winter Film Festival, which typically lasts around 6 weeks, and we try to do that in the January-February time frame. This year we focused on ethnographers, and so folks who came through usually after the expedition and in some way, whether it be through art or writing, recorded what happened here after the expedition, specifically with Native American tribes or what they knew of the West at the time. But next year we hope to focus on the more natural aspects. We kind of go from talking about people to talking about nature. So we'll have to see what's in store for next year's film festival.
Great. I know kids are a big part of the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center experience, and you guys have a lot of programs for students.
We do. We see a lot of different schools and a lot of different age ranges. We're kind of wrapping up the school year this year right now, but we've seen a lot of different folks, and we have some really great programming for those school groups. It's very affordable, and if you need help with any kind of tuition costs, so to speak, it's only $2 per student, but there is help out there if your school can't afford that. But if you can come see us, we've got some really cool programs. One of them that I just saw for the first time this week was To Bleed or Not to Bleed. And the whole idea was to focus on the medicine of the expedition. And now today we see it as very rudimentary, basic, but back then it's what they had. And there were some pretty scary things that they used for medicine. Others would be Mapping the Way West, where they talk about how they got to where they got to. Another would be talking about what methods of travel the expedition used. And in most cases, students get to go home with some sort of project that they began at the Interpretive Center. So how did they get there focuses on how they got there, but the students go home with a little balsa wood dugout canoe that they made during the program.
Great. And again, for kids, it's just a fantastic experience, I know, whether they're with a school tour or not, but what are some of the reactions you get from kids that you interact with?
I think a lot of them, especially if they're not from Montana, tend to be pretty surprised. Because growing up in Michigan, I think they said the names Lewis and Clark going to elementary school, but beyond that, we don't learn a lot about it. And when kids come in, they've got the whole gamut of reactions, but they're usually pretty interested, and there are a lot of interactive displays that kids can tug on or try clothes on and do different things to really get them thinking and doing, as opposed to just being your typical museum that, look but don't touch. We're definitely a touch everything kind of museum. Yeah. You
guys also have a gift shop in the Interpretive Center. What are some of the things that people can take home with them?
We do, and that is run by the Lewis and Clark Foundation, one of our partners. A whole variety of books, from children's books to very in-depth, detailed novels. A lot of souvenir things. We've got the DVDs that we show in the theater. For really small kids, they can get coloring books of the different members of the expedition. A lot of Native American handcrafted jewelry. Some really neat things to go home and make sure that you get that personalized gift or souvenir for your experience.
All right, so it's really something for everyone in the family, from the kids to mom to dad to
absolutely
everybody. All right. Well, you mentioned the Winter Film Festival. That's just one of the many programs you have, but I know you have a very special event coming up that I believe it's the 27th year of this, the Lewis and Clark Festival. Is that right?
It is, yes, and I'm excited because this will be my first. So the Lewis and Clark Festival is going to happen this month, the 17th, 18th, and 19th. That's a weekend. And that is put on primarily by the Lewis and Clark Foundation along with some other partners. And it's going to be an exciting weekend. On Friday night, they've got a bluegrass festival, excuse me. And so they're going to have a concert and have some really great bands. On Saturday, there's going to be every kind of activity you could think of, including black powder weapons demonstrations, all kinds of vendors, informational booths, different activities for kids, and educational things to do. And then on Sunday, there's going to be a tour at Gates of the Mountains. So it's going to be a really exciting weekend. To coincide with that, the Interpretive Center is going to put on a Lewis and Clark Adventure Challenge at the Interpretive Center on Saturday morning before the festival kicks off. So from 9 to 10:30, we're going to have an activity that's specific to kids under 12 years of age. And there's going to be a short, approximately 1 mile walk with different activities interspersed along the walk, including one at Giant Springs State Park. So we're partnering with them for this. It's absolutely free, like most of our activities and events. And we really encourage families and young children to come out and experience Lewis and Clark.
Great. And again, that's June 17th through the 19th.
Yes.
More information, they can call the center or the foundation, which I think we might be able to put that information up there. As Andrea said, Friday there's the Bluegrass in the Park. Saturday, all kinds of festival activities. And on Sunday, the Gates of the Mountains dinner cruise, as well as some other events too. 727-8733 is the number of the center, and 452-5661 is the number of the foundation, and they can give you all kinds of information. And again, we're hoping that the weather will hold out and be nice for us that weekend. I'm sure it will be, but rain or shine, the event's going to go on, right?
It is going to occur, yes. So hopefully everybody can just put on their rain gear if we do have rain.
Yeah.
But if not, we're looking for a nice sunny weekend.
All right. Well, I know that's just part of a big summer of activities that you have, because I believe coming up the following week you have what's called the Riverside Voices program. Tell us what that's about.
Yes, so we are very fortunate at the Interpretive Center to get a variety of speakers to come in and talk about subjects related to Lewis and Clark or their era. And starting on June 24th, every Friday evening for the summer at 7 p.m., we're going to have our Riverside Voices programs. And we have about half a dozen different speakers who are going to come in and talk about different topics. We also have some of our staff who make special programs for these events. And again, it's absolutely free. We encourage anyone and everyone to come out. If the weather is not desirable, we can always move it indoors, and we've got a backup. So hopefully folks will come out on their Friday nights and enjoy a few programs.
Yeah, can you tell us maybe some of the ones that are already lined up for you?
Sure. So the first one is going to be the Dog Soldier Ledger book.
Okay.
And that's one of our special guest speakers, and it talks about the Cheyenne dog soldiers and how there was a desire to capture their activities through photographs, but it never happened. And somehow they happened upon a book that was left on a battlefield one day of the dog soldiers. And it was so incredibly detailed, right down to each individual weapon that soldiers were using, that the dog soldiers were using, that they could tell the date of the battle, who was there, what company or regiment was there. Really incredible stuff. So that's going to kick off our summer program. It's going to be pretty exciting.
All right, what else do you have lined up as far as the Riverside Voices?
We also have one of our local interpreters who's going to talk about the Louisiana Purchase and how that led into the expedition and what came of that later on. We have a special guest speaker who is a distant cousin of George Bird Grinnell, who is considered the founder of Glacier National Park. We have a gal who's going to come in and talk about dueling paintbrushes and different artists who captured the landscapes that Lewis and Clark went through. We've just got a number of exciting topics coming up. And you can always stop by the Interpretive Center or give us a call if you want to know which ones are happening on which dates.
Great. You guys also have a website too.
We do. It's really difficult to navigate, so I really suggest that folks just go to Google.
You go to Google and just put in Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center, Great Falls, Montana.
Exactly. That's the easiest way to get there.
Great. Now I know in the past too that, and I think that's coming up as well, you've got Stargazing Parties. What are those all about?
Yes. So we don't have them in the summertime because it stays light so late.
Sure.
But we do partner with the Central Montana Astronomy Society, and starting again in the fall on September 9th, we have almost monthly star parties. And the Central Montana Astronomy Society is very generous in bringing out all of their telescopes so that folks can look into their personal telescopes and show them what's going on in the sky. And sometimes that might just be your typical stars and constellations. Other times we can see specific planets or special events like meteors and showers. And it's really neat to have these experts who are experts because it's what they love to come out and share their knowledge with us. On September 9th, we have what we call a Star Party Extravaganza, which means that we'll have additional activities both indoors and outdoors. Usually involves some kind of craft or fun activity for children. And in the past, the Central Montana Astronomy Society has given away prizes, including a small telescope.
Okay.
So really neat to bring out the family and bring out the kids. And I've heard a lot of people tell me that they'd like to come to them, but they haven't made it yet. So September 9th. It's going to be your first chance to do that again.
I can tell you from personal experience, several years ago, I took my son and my daughter too out to that, and we were able to see, I can't remember which planet it was, but they were very helpful, and it was amazing. And
it's
it was
a lot of fun.
Very, it was affordable entertainment, and it was great. The kids loved it because they got to stay up late at night. So, so that's coming up starting in September, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, as you look at the center, are there any plans on the horizon to expand the center? And if so, what could we be looking forward to?
We do not have plans to physically expand.
Okay.
So no building expansions in the near future that we can see right now. However, we are looking to expand some of our programming, and some of that might involve bringing on more partners, some of it might involve bringing on more staff, or just kind of looking at what we have to work with and seeing what the public needs are. But we are looking to expand some of our programming, but not so much the building.
All right. Do you get a lot of suggestions and ideas from the public on how you can make things better?
You know, it's kind of a catch-22 because
Sure.
so many people leave so happy.
Mm-hmm.
We often don't get that sort of feedback, but we welcome it. If folks think that there is a need in the community and we could fill it, I'd love to hear about it. So please send suggestions our way.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Andrea, what would you say? You've been on the job for just not quite a year, but you're getting there. From your experience so far, what's your favorite part of the center?
That's so hard to answer.
The
it
whole
really
thing,
is.
yeah.
The whole thing. You know, I have to say that it's an incredible facility, and it's a beautiful exhibit hall, and really a wonderful landscape that the center is on. Great neighbors with Giant Springs State Park. We've got the Riverside Trail right there. I think what I'm most impressed with is the knowledge and passion of our staff and volunteers and the people in the community. I think it's really been overwhelming how incredible these folks are. And I say it all the time, and my staff is probably sick of hearing it, but they have more knowledge in their little fingers about Lewis and Clark than I could ever hope to have. And I'm constantly impressed with what they know and what they're willing to share, and their eagerness to share all of that information and love of the expedition with everyone else. So we really encourage folks to come down, and if you're interested, have that one-on-one conversation with a staff member or volunteer and pick their brains and really get to know the members of the Corps of Discovery through the folks that live today.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are really surprised too that maybe have not been to the center. Those who have been love to come back because you can always find out something new. But I think a lot of people are surprised that Great Falls, Montana, this part of the state, has such a hidden gem, I guess you could say.
We really do.
All right.
It's
Well,
incredible.
we wanted to talk real quickly again about the Lewis and Clark Festival, June 17th through the 19th. And again, people can call you at the center or call some of the staff there at the center.
Yes.
And we got the numbers up there and some of the activities that are happening. June 17th through the 19th. It's a Friday through a Sunday. Call 727-8733. That's the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center, or 452-5661 for more information. That is the Lewis and Clark Foundation. Well, that's going to do it. Andrea Tavegia, the manager of the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center. Again, welcome to
Thank you.
Montana. And I know it's a little different from Michigan, but we're glad to have you here.
It's a good difference.
It is. All
It
right.
is.
Well, thank you again, and good luck with everything that's coming up at the Lewis and Clark Interpretive Center. I'm Tim McGonigal. That's going to do it for this edition of Face the State.
You've been watching Face the State.